further notice. And Gobert, Thursday afternoon, made his first public remarks through his Instagram account. I want to thank everyone for the outpouring of concern and support over the last 24 hours. I've gone through so many emotions since learning of my diagnosis, mostly fear, anxiety, and embarrassment. The first and most important thing is I would like to publicly apologize to the people that I may have endangered. At the time, I had no idea I was even infected. I was careless and make no excuse. I hope my story serves as a warning and causes everyone to take this seriously. I will do whatever I can to support using my experience as a way to educate others and prevent the spread of this virus. I am under great care and will fully recover. Thank you again for all of your support. I encourage everyone to take all the steps to stay safe and healthy. Love. For a little more insight, we welcome Michael Wilbon into SportsCenter. And Mike, you've made a Hall of Fame career out of taking memorable historical moments in sports and putting them to perspective for sports fans. How do you assess what's transpired since we first learned that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus up until now?
Wow, Michael, there's so many things, as you know, that have gone on these last 24 hours. Heartbreaking on one end. I don't think we can get away from that. For people for whom sports is a massive escape from everyday anything. I mean, so there's heartbreak there. And I think, as crazy as it is to say this and suggest this, there's some relief that maybe canceling so many mass gatherings, as we've heard from medical experts, that canceling those mass gatherings might lead us to a sort of a flattening of this and a containment and getting back to whatever the new normal is. And maybe, I don't know, I don't want to sound ridiculously optimistic. What, 2 months? I mean, if it did, so mid-May, I mean, would we learn some lessons from that? Perhaps. But there are conflicting emotions when you hear these cancellations, particularly when it comes to the college kids and seeing players test positive and putting a season on hold. But also, maybe that's where the recovery starts. Maybe that's the reality that we as a culture had to come to in dealing with the seriousness, the gravity of this situation.
All right, so the NBA, though, Mike, is hopeful that it can resume its season this year. And whether it's 30 days, which clearly would be the best case scenario possible, or a little longer. If and when they do resume their season this year, how should they go about determining a champion in 2020?
Well, Michael, I would think they could go about it in a fairly normal way. And 30 days from just the medical experts that I've been listening to seems, I mean, a little optimistic. But let's just say it's 60 days. Let's say in mid-May, you could put a playoff field out there. That is pretty much this playoff field. And I'm sorry to the 9, 10 teams that can't catch the 8 that don't have the time. But if you put 16 teams out there, 1 through 8, as they are situated now, and you started a playoff, and even if you shorten the first round to 3 out of 5, or the first 2 rounds to 3 out of 5, what would be so abnormal about that? It will come later. We've already had an owner from the Atlanta Hawks, right, suggest that the season should start in December and end in August. Well, if you started it in mid-May, you wouldn't even have to get to August, and you'd probably have to start the next season later. So maybe you do start that season in December, and maybe things evolve differently for the NBA. But I don't think that is so, out of the normal that people would feel that the season was tainted or needed an asterisk. It would seem to me you could have a championship play out in a fairly normal way.
You mentioned something earlier, and I do want to go back to that before I let you go, Mike, that sports, from its inception, has always been this safe place for people to go to in unpleasant times and feel better about something, society, what have you. But that very thing has been taken away, at least for the time being. How do you think this will impact everything going forward?
Michael, we're in such, new territory here. It's a great question. I mean, as a little kid, I used to listen to my father, who I think was 16 years old the day Pearl Harbor was bombed, talk about sports and going to the movies and just basic things like that, sort of holding people together. And that was their refuge. And so now, as you say, quite accurately, we don't have that. But it still could be. I mean, whenever the other side comes, and a quick fix seems 30 days, whenever that is, let's say it's 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 5 months, whenever it is, I think we're going to hold on to it tighter than we ever have.
Hey, sports always been the most unifying aspect of American society, and we'll see how that plays out once these games do resume, hopefully sooner rather than later. Michael Wilbon here with us on SportsCenter. Thanks, Mike. Some more reaction from the sports world, and some of these players, coaches, and administrators are also mindful of the people who are impacted directly by loss of income from the cancellation of these games. Kevin Love on Instagram: through the game of basketball, we've been able to address major issues and stand together as a progressive league that cares about the players, the fans, and the communities where we work. I'm concerned about the level of anxiety that everyone is feeling, and that is why I'm committing $100,000 through the Kevin Love Fund in support of the Cavs arena and support staff that had a sudden life shift due to the suspension of the NBA season. I hope that during this time of crisis, others will join me in supporting our communities.
Teammate Donovan Mitchell seeming to take him to task, so then he posted on Instagram to say the following: I want to thank everyone for the outpouring of concern and support over the last 24 hours. I have gone through so many emotions since learning my diagnosis, mostly fear, anxiety, and embarrassment. The first and most important thing is I would like to publicly apologize to the people that I may have endangered. At the time, I had no idea I was even infected. I was careless and make no excuse. I hope my story serves as a warning and causes everyone to take this seriously. I will do whatever I can to support, using my experience as a way to educate others and prevent the spread of this virus. I am under great care and will fully recover. Thank you again, all of you, for your support. I encourage everyone to take all of the steps to stay safe and healthy. Love.
With that, we bring in Stephen A. Smith once again, joining us from our New York studios. And Stephen A., I'd like to offer a little bit more context to the Instagram post there by Rudy Gobert, because that came after Donovan Mitchell, who, as we know, has since been diagnosed with coronavirus as well. He posted on his Instagram saying something that you could read into if you wanted to, saying we hope people can continue to educate themselves and realize that they need to behave responsibly for both their own health and for the well-being of those around them. And of course, we saw the video of Rudy Gobert touching the microphones, and we have heard that he was quite careless in the locker room leading up to last night's events. What's your take on what's happening with this Utah Jazz team?
Well, I'm concerned about them because they had a player in Rudy Gobert who obviously was insensitive to the situation, made light of the situation in a fashion that simply was just not an intelligent thing to do. And not only was he jovial and playful, inappropriately so with the media in terms of touching their microphones and their cameras and things of that nature, but also he went into the locker room, according to a report by our very own Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski, earlier today, where you had players talking about how he was playful and he was toying with them because he didn't take it seriously at all. He was touching their clothes. He was touching their material. He was touching them. So clearly he was making light of the situation in a fashion that was irresponsible. As a result, one could argue Donovan Mitchell has been contaminated potentially because of that. We don't know who else on the Utah Jazz may be suffering the same plight. We'll find out, I suspect, in hours, if not by tomorrow. Not to mention the fact that, again, he was on the court for 31 minutes when they played against the Toronto Raptors on Monday. According to reports, they were being tested as well. So this could have a very rippling effect, to say the least.
Again, nothing, of course, done intentionally, but to Donovan's point, Rudy's point, hopefully at this point everybody can learn from what has happened and go forward, being as smart as humanly possible as everybody tries to learn more about the situation. Stephen A. Smith, thank you for your perspective as always. Ryan.
And let's put this in perspective. Nationwide impact of the coronavirus at this point, there's been more than 1,300 cases in the United States and 39 deaths. So, Sage, when you look at everything that's happened today, I think one of the lessons is safety first is paramount.
Absolutely.
That's the big thing. You feel for those affected, but if anything's been learned from Gobert, it's the idea that we all have to stay safe. We all have to be careful. This is serious business.
And of course, pretty much everything that we know of, basketball, of course, football, all kinds of activities have been canceled. We do know now, without fans and patrons, PGA Tour event continuing, NASCAR right now continuing without fans, also some combat sports, MMA, etc. We're still learning what's happening with that, but for now, those are the only things that are continuing in the sports world.
That's right. And SportsCenter continues with Zubin and Michael. We'll see you.
Studio be in Atlanta, and under normal circumstances, the vibe would be a little bit different on a Thursday as we would be, getting you ready for 5 games. But these obviously aren't normal circumstances. This is game time. Of course, brought to you by Toyota. Ro Paris, joined by Dennis Scott, Quentin Richardson. Now, we're here to deliver the latest on the impact of the COVID-19, or more commonly known as the coronavirus, how it's affecting the sports world. So a pause button has been pressed on all the professional